My cousin betrayed on me. My mother lied to me, and my grandmother, who pulled all the strings for decades, wanted to hide the truth. But family gatherings are supposed to be happy occasions, right? That's what I thought. At least until this one flipped my entire world upside down. It was a Friday evening at my grandmother Evelyn's house. A sprawling old place with creaky floors and the smell of lavender that never quite leaves the air. The gathering was meant to celebrate her 75th birthday, a milestone, as she reminded us with a smirk every time someone walked in. I wasn't particularly excited to go. My relationship with most of my family was decent, but not exactly warm. Still, I figured it wouldn't be so bad. Olivia, my cousin, would be there, and she always made these events tolerable. She and I grew up like siblings. Late-night phone calls about crushes, plotting revenge on bullies in middle school, and even sneaking out to parties as teenagers. I trusted her like no one else. The night started off fine enough. Harper, my younger sister, was glued to her phone in the corner, and my parents were doing their usual routine. Rebecca playing hostess and Daniel chatting with Uncle Marcus about work. Olivia and I stuck together, poking fun at our aunts and uncles, sharing a quiet laugh about the way Grandma Evelyn always managed to dominate the conversation. It felt normal. But then, everything shifted. It started with Olivia excusing herself from our conversation. She seemed distracted, almost jittery, which wasn't like her. "Be back in a bit," she said, giving me a tight smile. I didn't think much of it until I noticed her slipping out the back door with Logan, the neighbor. Logan and I had always had a weird relationship. He was one of those people who seemed too interested in my business, always hovering just close enough to be annoying. Seeing them together felt off. An hour later, I found out why. We were playing one of those silly games Evelyn insisted on at family parties. This time it was charades. It was my turn, and I was halfway through acting out Jurassic Park. Terrible, I know, when Logan sauntered into the living room, laughing loudly. Olivia was right behind him, her face flushed. Everyone stopped to look at them. "Sorry to interrupt," Logan said, but his tone wasn't apologetic. He looked directly at me, then turned to Olivia with a smirk. "You sure you don't want to tell him?" The room went silent. I felt every pair of eyes shift between Olivia and me. My stomach dropped. "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Olivia avoided my gaze, her cheeks now bright red. "It's nothing, Caleb. Logan's just being Logan." But Logan wasn't done. "Oh, come on, Olivia. Tell him how you really feel. Or do you want me to do it?" Before I could demand an explanation, Logan leaned in and whispered something to Olivia. Whatever he said made her snap. "Fine," she blurted out, her voice sharp enough to make Evelyn gasp. "Caleb, I told Logan something in confidence, and clearly, he can't keep his mouth shut. Can we just not do this here?" But it was already too late. The damage was done. Everyone was staring at us, waiting for an explanation. I could feel my father's disapproving glare and my mother's worried fidgeting. "What did you tell him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Olivia hesitated, then crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "I told him about that time you lied to me. About Chloe." Chloe. Hearing her name was like a punch to the gut. She was my ex-girlfriend, someone I hadn't thought about in months. Olivia knew everything about how that relationship ended. Or so I thought. "That's it?" I asked, confused. "What does that have to do with anything?" Olivia looked away, but Logan was quick to jump in. "Oh, Caleb, don't play dumb. Olivia told me how you used her to cover your ass. How you lied to her about why Chloe broke up with you. You made her look like an idiot. What the hell are you talking about?" I snapped. "That's not even true." But Olivia didn't deny it. She just stood there, arms crossed, avoiding my gaze. My head was spinning. Why would she tell Logan something so personal? And why was she suddenly acting like I was the villain? The night ended in chaos. I tried to confront Olivia, but she brushed me off, muttering something about not wanting to make a scene. Logan kept smirking at me like he'd won some unspoken battle. My parents didn't say much, but I caught them exchanging uneasy glances. When we got home, Rebecca pulled me aside. "Just let it go, Caleb," she said, her tone softer than usual. "Family fights aren't worth it." But I couldn't let it go. Something about Olivia's betrayal felt bigger than just a stupid argument about my ex. And my mother's reaction, so calm, so dismissive, only made me more suspicious. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the events in my head, trying to figure out where everything had gone wrong. Olivia had always been on my side, my partner in crime. Why would she do this? And why did Logan seem so invested in stirring the pot? The next morning, things got even weirder. I overheard my parents arguing in the kitchen. "You need to talk to him," my dad said, his voice low but tense. "And say what?" My mom shot back. "That this is all Evelyn's fault? That Olivia's just, what? Acting out because of something that happened years ago?" My dad sighed. "We can't keep sweeping this under the rug, Rebecca. He's not a kid anymore. He deserves to know." "Know what?" I stepped into the kitchen, startling them both. My mom froze, her face pale. My dad looked away, suddenly fascinated with the floor. "Nothing," Rebecca said quickly. "Go back to bed, Caleb." But it wasn't nothing. I could feel it in the air, thick and suffocating. Something was wrong, something big, and I was going to find out what it was. The argument I overheard between my parents that morning stuck with me. My mom's nervous denial, my dad's sudden silence. It was like they were hiding something. Something that went beyond Olivia's betrayal or that stupid scene at the party. But what? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss of family secrets I wasn't supposed to know. I just didn't realize how deep that abyss went. The first thing I did was confront Olivia. I caught her at her house a couple of days later. Her mom was out, and Olivia answered the door looking like she'd barely slept. Good, I thought. She should feel guilty. "Caleb, I'm not in the mood," she said as soon as she saw me. "Tough," I replied, pushing past her into the living room. "What the hell was that at Grandma's party? Why would you tell Logan, of all people, about Chloe? And why would you lie about me?" Olivia sighed, crossing her arms as she leaned against the wall. "It wasn't a lie," she said, her voice sharper than I expected. "You've been lying to me for years, Caleb. Years. What are you even talking about?" I demanded. Her expression hardened. "You think I don't know about what happened with your mom and my dad? You think I don't know why everyone's been so weird around each other for, like, my entire life?" I blinked, completely caught off guard. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Everything," Olivia snapped. "You've always acted like we were some big, happy family, but we're not. And you know what? I'm done pretending." Before I could respond, she stormed out of the room, leaving me standing there like an idiot. What did my mom and her dad, Uncle Marcus, have to do with anything? And why was she acting like I'd been keeping secrets from her? I didn't get any answers from Olivia, but her words planted a seed of suspicion that I couldn't ignore. That night, I tried to talk to my mom again. She was in the kitchen, going through the mail like everything was normal. "Mom," I said, leaning against the counter, "what's going on between you and Uncle Marcus?" Her hands froze for a split second, barely noticeable, before she continued sorting the envelopes. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Don't do that," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. Olivia said something about you and him, and I overheard you and Dad arguing the other morning." "What's going on?" she sighed, setting the mail down and rubbing her temples. "Caleb, it's complicated." "Then simplify it for me," I shot back. She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might actually tell me. But then she shook her head. "It's not my story to tell." "Whose story is it then?" I demanded. "Just drop it," she said, her voice firm. "It's better that way." But I couldn't drop it. Not after everything that had happened. The next piece of the puzzle came from an unlikely source. Grace, an old family friend who'd been close to Grandma Evelyn for decades. She was one of those people who knew everyone's business, but rarely shared what she knew. Still, I figured it was worth a shot. I stopped by her house the next day under the pretense of helping her with some tech issue. She was always complaining about her computer. After fixing her email, a 5-minute job she swore would take an hour, I casually brought up the party. "Did you notice anything weird about Olivia that night?" I asked. Grace gave me a sharp look. Her lips pursed. "Why do you ask?" "She's been acting strange," I said. And she said something about my mom and Uncle Marcus. Do you know anything about that? Grace hesitated, which was unusual for her. Normally, she loved to gossip. Caleb, she said slowly, there are some things about your family that are better left in the past. Stirring it all up again won't do anyone any good. Why does everyone keep saying that? I snapped. If it's in the past, then why is it still affecting everything now? She sighed, setting her teacup down with a clink. Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. Grace leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant as she began to speak. It all started with your grandmother, she said. Evelyn has always been controlling. She likes to keep her family in line, and she doesn't care who she hurts to do it. What does that have to do with my mom and Uncle Marcus? I asked. Grace hesitated again, then said, Evelyn had this idea of how things should be. She thought Marcus was more deserving of certain things than your mother. It caused a lot of tension between them, especially when it came to family decisions. But the real breaking point was something that happened about 10 years ago. What happened? I pressed. I don't know all the details, Grace admitted. But I do know it involved a decision Evelyn made that affected Rebecca and Marcus in very different ways. Your mom was devastated, and Marcus, well, let's just say he didn't come out of it unscathed either. I left Grace's house with more questions than answers. What was this decision Evelyn had made? And why was it still causing tension a decade later? I couldn't shake the feeling that Olivia's betrayal was somehow tied to all of this. And then there was Logan, who seemed way too interested in stirring the pot. Was he just being his usual annoying self, or was there something more to it? That night, I decided to confront Logan. I found him hanging out in his garage, fiddling with the old car he was always working on. What do you know about Olivia and my family? I asked, cutting straight to the point. Logan smirked, wiping his hands on a rag. Why do you care? Because she's acting weird, and so is everyone else, I said. And you seem to know more than you're letting on. He shrugged, leaning against the car. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Logan, I said through gritted teeth, I'm not in the mood for your games. He studied me for a moment, then said, let's just say Olivia's not the only one who's sick of pretending everything's fine in your family. You all like to sweep things under the rug, but some rugs are too small to hide the mess. What the hell does that mean? I demanded. He just smirked again and walked back into the house, leaving me standing there, furious and more confused than ever. By the time the next day rolled around, I was teetering on the edge of losing my mind. Everyone had a piece of the puzzle, but no one wanted to share the full picture. Olivia was cagey, Grace was vague, Logan was infuriatingly cryptic, and my parents seemed hell-bent on keeping me in the dark. Whatever was going on, it was clear that it wasn't just some petty argument. This was deep, and it had been festering for years. I couldn't let it go. Not after the way Olivia had turned on me. Not after seeing my mom and dad exchange those worried glances. So, I did what any desperate, sleep-deprived person would do. I started digging. My first stop was Grandma Evelyn's house. If Grace was right and this all traced back to her, I needed to know what role she played. I showed up unannounced, something that Evelyn hated, but I didn't care. She answered the door wearing one of her usual tailored outfits, her gray hair perfectly styled. Evelyn had this way of looking at you that made you feel like you were already in trouble, and today was no exception. Caleb, she said, her tone clipped. To what do I owe the pleasure? I need to talk to you, I said, stepping inside before she could say no. She raised an eyebrow but didn't stop me. About what? I hesitated for a moment, then said, about whatever's been going on between Mom, Uncle Marcus, and Olivia. Everyone's acting like it's some big secret, but I know you know what's going on. Evelyn sighed, closing the door behind me. Caleb, some things are better left. Don't say better left in the past, I interrupted. I've heard that line enough times to last a lifetime. I want the truth. For a moment, Evelyn just stared at me, her eyes cold and calculating. Then, to my surprise, she motioned for me to sit down. Fine, she said, but don't say I didn't warn you. Evelyn's story was horrifying. 10 years ago, Uncle Marcus was in a bad place financially. His business had nearly gone bankrupt, and he'd come to Evelyn for help. My mom, Rebecca, had also been struggling. She and my dad were trying to buy our first house, but money was tight. Both of them needed financial support, and Evelyn had the means to provide it. But instead of helping them equally, Evelyn had decided to make a choice. She gave Marcus a significant amount of money to save his business, leaving Rebecca to fend for herself. It wasn't personal, Evelyn said, her voice flat. I just thought Marcus had more potential. He was running a business, creating jobs. Rebecca was just starting a family. It seemed like the better investment. I stared at her, stunned. You treated your kids like they were stock options? Evelyn's lips tightened. I did what I thought was best for the family. And what about Olivia? I asked. What does she have to do with this? Evelyn hesitated. Rebecca was devastated. Caleb. She and Marcus didn't speak for years after that. But Olivia, she found out about it later. And let's just say she didn't take it well. I left Evelyn's house with a sick feeling in my stomach. Her decision might have been logical in her mind, but it had clearly ripped our family apart. My mom must have felt betrayed, not just by Evelyn but by Marcus too. And Olivia, how had she found out? And why did she blame me? Later that day, I got an unexpected text from Chloe, my ex-girlfriend. Chloe asterisk, can we talk? I know about what happened at the party. There's something you need to know. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. Chloe and I hadn't spoken in months, not since our messy breakup. I wasn't sure I was ready to face her again, but if she had answers, I couldn't ignore her. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She looked the same as always, bright red hair, piercing green eyes, and that air of confidence that had first drawn me to her. But today, there was a nervousness in her expression that I'd never seen before. Thanks for meeting me, she said, fidgeting with her coffee cup. What's this about, Chloe? I asked. What do you know about the party? She hesitated, then said, Olivia told me something a while back. Something about your family. At the time, I didn't think it was my place to say anything, but now, just spit it out, I said, my patience wearing thin. Chloe took a deep breath. Olivia found out about what your grandmother did, about how she chose Marcus over your mom. But it's not just that. Olivia thinks your mom lied to her. She thinks Rebecca knew about the money all along and just let it happen. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. That doesn't make sense, I said. Why would Mom let Evelyn screw her over like that? Chloe shrugged. I don't know. But Olivia's convinced that your mom is just as much to blame as your grandmother. And she's angry, Caleb. Angry enough to do something drastic. I left the coffee shop more confused than ever. If Olivia was angry at my mom, why had she turned on me? And what did she mean about my mom letting it happen? None of it added up. When I got home, I decided to confront my mom again. Why did you let Grandma pick Uncle Marcus over you? I asked, cornering her in the living room. Rebecca froze, her eyes widening. Where did you hear that? Grandma told me, I said. And so did Chloe. And Olivia's been acting like it's your fault. What's going on, Mom? Rebecca sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I didn't have a choice, Caleb, she said, her voice muffled. What does that mean? I pressed. It means Evelyn didn't just offer Marcus the money, she said, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. She told me that if I made a fuss about it, she'd cut me off completely. No help, no inheritance, nothing. And we couldn't afford to lose that support. I stared at her, stunned. So you just let her screw you over? I had you and Harper to think about, she said. I couldn't risk everything just to prove a point. But I didn't know Olivia would find out. I didn't know she'd hate me for it. The pieces were starting to come together, but there were still gaps. What role had Logan played in all this? And why did Olivia feel the need to humiliate me at the party? I was starting to see the full picture, but something told me the worst was yet to come. By now, the threads were starting to weave together into a picture, one I wasn't sure I wanted to see. My family's dirty laundry was dirtier than I'd imagined, and I still didn't know why I had become Olivia's target. What had I done to deserve her betrayal? The more I uncovered, the more it felt like I was the collateral damage of something much bigger. I spent the next morning replaying my conversations with Evelyn, Grace, and my mom, trying to make sense of everything. If my grandmother's decision to favor Marcus had caused this rift, why had it blown up now? And why drag me into it? The answers, as it turned out, were more tangled than I could have guessed. The breakthrough came later that day when Grace called me out of the blue. "I've been thinking about what you asked me," she said, "and there's something I didn't tell you." "What is it?" I asked, gripping my phone tightly. "It wasn't just about the money," Grace said. "Evelyn didn't just give Marcus financial help. She made Rebecca take the fall for something. Something that damaged her reputation in the family." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Your mother was made to look like she betrayed the family," Grace said. "It's why Marcus and Olivia have always held a grudge against her. Evelyn orchestrated the whole thing, but Rebecca took the blame." I froze, my mind racing. What did she take the blame for? Grace hesitated. "I don't know the exact details, but it had to do with a property dispute, something about who would inherit Evelyn's vacation home. Evelyn manipulated things so Marcus would get it, but it was framed to make it look like Rebecca had signed away her own claim." This was getting worse by the second. My mom had been forced to sacrifice not just money, but her reputation and relationships, all because of Evelyn's twisted sense of control. No wonder she and Marcus couldn't stand to be in the same room. I decided to confront Olivia again. This time, I wasn't going to let her brush me off. I found her at a local park, sitting alone on a bench. She looked surprised to see me, but not surprised enough to leave. "Caleb," she said, her tone wary. "What do you want now?" "I want answers," I said, sitting down next to her. "I know about what Grandma did to my mom. I know about the money, the property, everything. But I don't understand why you're so angry with me. What did I do?" Olivia stared at the ground, her jaw tight. "You didn't do anything, Caleb," she said finally. "But your mom did. She let my dad believe she betrayed him. She let me grow up thinking she was the villain, all to protect herself. She didn't have a choice." I snapped. "Grandma manipulated her. You know that. She could have told the truth," Olivia shot back. "She could have stood up for herself instead of letting Grandma pit us all against each other." I shook my head. "Do you really think it's that simple? She had a family to think about, me, Harper, my dad. She didn't want to lose everything." Olivia looked at me then, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and pain. "Do you know what it's like to grow up thinking someone you trusted betrayed you? Do you know what it's like to hear whispers at family gatherings? To see your dad drink himself to sleep because he feels like a failure?" Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For the first time, I saw the situation from her perspective. She hadn't just been angry, she'd been hurt. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I didn't know." Olivia sighed, leaning back against the bench. "It's not just about the past, Caleb. It's about how this family works, or doesn't work. We've all been living in Grandma's shadow, pretending everything's fine, when it's not. And I'm done pretending." Her words stayed with me long after I left the park. She was right. Our family had spent years burying secrets and pretending they didn't exist. But the cracks were starting to show, and I wasn't sure we could hold it together much longer. That night, Logan showed up at my house unannounced. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked, my patience already worn thin. "I thought you might want to know the whole story," Logan said, leaning casually against the doorframe. "What are you talking about?" He smirked. "Let's just say Olivia isn't the only one who knows things about your family. Chloe told me a lot more than you think." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "What do you want, Logan?" "You've been stirring the pot since the party." "Why?" "Because I'm tired of watching your family act like they're better than everyone else," he said, his smirk fading. "Evelyn's not some perfect matriarch, and your mom's not the saint you think she is." "What do you mean?" I asked, my chest tightening. "Ask your mom about the vacation house," Logan said. "Ask her what she gave up to keep Evelyn happy. And then ask yourself if she really did it for you and Harper, or if she did it for herself." With that, he walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. The next day, I confronted my mom again. "What really happened with the vacation house?" I asked, my voice trembling. Rebecca froze, her face pale. "Who told you about that?" "It doesn't matter," I said. "I just want the truth." She sighed, sinking into a chair. "Evelyn wanted to keep control of the house, even after she gave it to Marcus. She told me that if I didn't sign the papers, she'd cut me off entirely. I thought I was protecting you and Harper, But, but what? I pressed. She looked away. But part of me just didn't want to fight her anymore. I was tired, Caleb. Tired of being the scapegoat. Tired of the arguments. Tired of everything. So I let her win. Her confession left me reeling. My mom had been trapped, manipulated, and worn down by Evelyn's games. But in her attempt to protect us, or herself, she'd allowed the damage to spread to the rest of the family. And now, it was up to me to decide what to do with the truth. By the time I had pieced together most of the story, I felt like I was drowning. My family was a mess of lies, manipulations, and betrayals, and everyone seemed to think I was the one who could somehow fix it all. My mom had been backed into a corner by Evelyn. Olivia was consumed with anger and betrayal, and Marcus, well, he wasn't innocent either. And then there was Logan, who seemed to know just enough to make everything worse. I realized there was no way out of this without confronting the truth head-on. If my family was going to tear itself apart, I needed to know what we were fighting over. The only way forward was through the storm. It started with a family meeting, which was about as disastrous as you'd expect. I asked my parents, Olivia, Marcus, and even Evelyn to meet at our house. Surprisingly, everyone showed up. Maybe they were as tired of the secrecy as I was. Or maybe they just wanted to watch the fireworks. The tension in the room was suffocating. My mom sat stiffly on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. My dad stood behind her, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. Marcus leaned against the wall, his face unreadable, while Olivia avoided eye contact with everyone. Evelyn sat in the armchair like a queen on her throne, her gaze sharp and unyielding. I stood in the middle of it all, feeling like the referee in a boxing match no one wanted to admit they'd signed up for. "We need to talk," I said, my voice breaking the silence. "About everything." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Everything? That's quite the ambitious goal, Caleb. Let him speak," my mom said quietly. I took a deep breath. "I know about the money. I know about the vacation house. I know about how you pitted Mom and Marcus against each other. Grandma," Evelyn didn't flinch. "And what, exactly, do you think you're going to accomplish by bringing all this up now?" "I'm trying to understand why our family is so broken," I said, my voice rising. "Why Mom and Marcus don't talk. Why Olivia hates me. Why we've all spent years pretending everything is fine when it's not." For the first time, Evelyn's calm facade cracked. "You think this is my fault?" she asked, her voice sharp. "I did what I thought was best for this family." "What you thought was best," my mom said, her voice trembling with anger. "You didn't care who you hurt as long as you stayed in control." Evelyn turned to her. "And you think you were any better, Rebecca? You let me make the decisions. You never fought back. Because you didn't give me a choice," my mom snapped. "You manipulated me, just like you manipulated Marcus and Olivia." Marcus finally spoke up, his voice cold. "And what about you, Rebecca? You could have told me the truth. You could have stood up for yourself. But you let me believe you betrayed me." "I was trying to protect my family," my mom shot back. "I didn't want to lose everything." "Well, congratulations," Marcus said bitterly. "You lost me anyway." The room erupted into chaos. Everyone was yelling, pointing fingers, dredging up old wounds that had never really healed. Olivia sat silently through it all, her expression unreadable. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Stop," I shouted. "Just stop." The room fell silent, everyone turning to look at me. "This isn't just about what happened 10 years ago," I said, my voice trembling. "It's about now. About the fact that none of you are willing to take responsibility for your part in this." I turned to Marcus. "You blame Mom for everything, but you never stopped to think about what she was going through." I turned to my mom. "And you let Grandma push you around because you were too scared to stand up to her." Finally, I turned to Evelyn. "And you're the reason this family is falling apart. You put your pride and control above everyone else." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Be careful, Caleb." "No," I said. "I'm done being careful. I'm done pretending. If you want this family to stay broken, fine. But I'm not going to be part of the charade anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, but I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Olivia was the first to speak. "He's right," she said quietly. We've all been playing Grandma's game. It's time we stopped. Marcus looked at her, surprised. Olivia. No, she said firmly. I'm done being angry, Dad. I'm done blaming Aunt Rebecca. This isn't her fault. It's not Caleb's fault. It's Grandma's. Evelyn's expression hardened. You ungrateful little... No, Olivia interrupted. I'm not going to let you control me anymore. You don't get to decide how this family works. Not anymore. In the days that followed, everything started to change. Marcus and my mom began talking again, tentatively at first, but it was a start. Olivia apologized for what she'd done to me at the party, explaining that she'd lashed out because she didn't know how else to deal with her anger. I forgave her. How could I not, after everything we'd been through? Evelyn, on the other hand, was a different story. She refused to admit any wrongdoing, and for a while, it seemed like she might never speak to any of us again. But as much as it hurt to lose her, I knew it was the only way forward. Sometimes, you have to let go of the past to make room for the future. As for me, I'm still figuring things out. My family isn't perfect, far from it. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're moving in the right direction. And that's enough for now. Because sometimes, when you're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea, the only way out is to face the storm head-on and hope you come out the other side.